Welcome to Life Stories, where one act of kindness on a rainy night changes everything. Imagine being 16, invisible to the world, digging through trash just to survive, then stumbling upon a little girl alone, barefoot, and blind. No one had noticed her. No one had stopped. But he did. He gave her the only warm meal he had, and carried her through the freezing streets without asking why she was there or who she belonged to. This isn't a story about heroes. It's about the kind of courage that doesn't look like courage at all until it's the only thing left. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you may start to question who we choose to see and who we walk past without a second thought. Let's go back to the night it all began, when the city was asleep and a boy who had nothing gave everything. The city didn't notice him. It never had. It blinked and blared and shouted over him, its traffic lights pulsing red like warnings no one obeyed, its sidewalks packed with people who glanced past without really seeing. Chicago had a way of swallowing things whole, especially boys like Jaden. 16, homeless, black, invisible. He moved through the shadows like a rumor, weaving past corner stores with flickering signs, slipping behind dumpsters and broken fences like he belonged there. Because in a way, he did. His home was a lean-to of plywood and scavenged tarp, tucked behind a liquor store on the south side. It wasn't much, but it was his. In his threadbare backpack, he carried everything he owned. A cracked phone with no battery, a picture of his mom creased in the middle, a half-used book of matches, and a plastic spork taped together at the handle. On most nights, he kept to himself, stealing warmth from steam grates, eyeing trash bins behind bakeries at closing time, sleeping with one ear open for sirens or worse. But tonight was different. The air felt heavier, like the city was holding its breath. Jaden had just pulled a slightly stale sandwich from a bin behind a closed Vietnamese deli when he heard it. A stifled, shaking hiccup. Not the kind you get from crying, but the kind you get when you're trying not to. He froze. The sound came again, faint and close. Near a pile of flattened boxes by the fence, a small figure sat curled into herself, legs bare, skin scraped raw. Her dress, once pale pink, was soaked through and clung to her like a bruise. Jaden stepped closer, slow, cautious. She didn't flinch. Her eyes were wide, but unfocused, not tracking his movement. "You okay?" he asked, voice low but not soft. The girl turned toward his voice, but her gaze stayed empty. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she whispered. And Jaden's throat caught. Not because of what she said, but how she said it, like someone repeating rules they no longer believed in. "My name's Jaden," he replied, kneeling, still holding the sandwich. "So now I'm not a stranger." She didn't answer. Her arms were wrapped around her stomach like they were holding something in. Pain, fear, hunger. Jaden looked at the sandwich in his hand, then back at her. It was the only good food he'd seen all week. He unwrapped it. "Here," he said. She sniffed the bread. Her hand, small and trembling, reached for it like she expected it to vanish. The way she bit into it, slowly, carefully, reverently, made his chest twist, like she was afraid it might hurt, like food had hurt her before. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she said. "Where do you live, Lily?" A beat. Then, barely audible, "I don't know." He sat back against the brick, watched her eat in silence. The city growled in the distance, a thunder low and rolling across the skyline. Lily chewed with the steady, haunted rhythm of someone who knew how to survive without being saved. Jaden knew that rhythm. "My place isn't far," he said finally. "It's not warm, but it's dry." She didn't move. He added, "You don't have to come. I'll stay here with you if you want." Lily tilted her head, and for a second, just a second, Jaden saw something flicker in her expression. Relief, maybe, or recognition. She reached out her hand. He took it. They moved together through alleys slick with rain, past graffiti-stained brick and rusted fences. When they reached the shelter, 3 tarps and a milk crate, he wrapped her in the only blanket he had and set the crate upside down so she could sit. She leaned into it like she was used to balancing herself without help. She was blind. That much was clear now. But what wasn't clear was how a blind 7-year-old girl ended up alone in a freezing alley in South Chicago, without shoes, without a bag, without anyone looking for her. Jaden didn't ask. He knew better than to dig into someone else's silence. When she shivered, he gave her his hoodie. When she asked if he was still there, he whispered, "Yeah, still here." They didn't speak much after that. He told her a story about a girl who could hear colors and a boy who had spent so long being invisible he forgot what it felt like to be seen. Lily drifted off before the story finished. Jaden stayed awake, watching the tarp tremble in the wind, listening to the city rattle and hiss beyond the shelter walls. The rain fell harder after midnight, cold and constant. Jaden didn't sleep. His body ached from the concrete, from hunger, from carrying too much weight with too little hope. But something in him had shifted. And then it happened. Just before dawn, Jaden carried Lily through a shortcut behind a pawn shop. He ducked into a phone repair store for warmth and maybe a granola bar if the clerk wasn't watching. That's when he saw it. On the old TV mounted above the counter, the local news anchor's voice cut through the static. 7-year-old Lily Ellison, blind daughter of tech mogul Richard Ellison, has been missing for 3 days. Authorities believe she may have wandered from a park near Jackson Avenue. Jaden's blood ran cold. On screen, a photo appeared. Clean face, braided hair, pale pink dress. It was her. A beat later, the boys in the shop turned. "Yo," one of them said, squinting. "That's her, right? The girl on your back?" Jaden didn't answer. The clerk stood slowly. "Hey, kid, is that—" Jaden was already backing out the door. Lily clung to him tighter, his breath sharp and fast against his neck. He didn't stop moving until they were 5 blocks away, tucked behind a row of shut-down laundromats. "I don't want to go with the police," Lily whispered. "You won't," Jaden said. "We're going to find your real home." But even as he said it, part of him wondered what counted as home. And if, maybe, just maybe, he'd already brought her to the only one that mattered. What does it take for the world to notice someone it's trained itself to ignore? If you had nothing left to give, would you still choose to protect someone you just met? The storm wasn't over. In fact, for Jaden, it was only just beginning. Jaden didn't know how far 10 miles really felt until his legs began to shake halfway there. The rain hadn't stopped. It was colder now, steadier, and the thin tarp wrapped around Lily clung to both of them like skin. Each breath came harder. The sidewalk blurred under his feet. He could no longer feel the ground so much as memorize its punishment. Cracks, puddles, broken glass he stepped around without thinking. His arms ached from holding her, but he never adjusted his grip. She was light, yes, but something about carrying her felt heavier than anything he'd held before. Like he wasn't just carrying a body, but something more fragile. Trust. They didn't speak. The city didn't either. It only watched with wet windows and passing headlights, indifferent as ever. Jaden avoided main roads, walking alley to alley, each block pushing him farther from what little he called familiar. The deeper into the north side they went, the more the buildings changed. Storefronts gave way to townhouses, cracked pavement became clean stone, and the air smelled less like gasoline and more like wet earth and pine. But none of that made it easier. His socks were soaked. His shoes had split at the toe. And still, he kept going. By the 8th mile, Jaden's cough had turned sharp. Lily had gone quiet again, her cheek pressed into the curve of his neck. He thought maybe she was asleep until she whispered, "Are we close?" "Almost," he breathed. It was a lie. He had only a rough idea of the address. He hadn't caught the street number on the news, just a blurry image and a glimpse of the gate. Still, something in his gut told him they were near. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was just the need to believe he wasn't dragging her through this storm for nothing. When he finally turned onto a winding street lined with old oak trees and iron fences, he knew. The gate appeared like something out of a movie, tall, black, flanked by brick pillars. Lights glowed behind them. A house loomed beyond, its windows wide and warm. Jaden's heart thudded. He walked up, legs trembling, and pressed the call button. No response. He pressed again, harder this time. A crackle. A voice. "Yes?" He leaned into the speaker, breath shaky. "I found her. Lily. I found Lily Ellison." Silence, then a click. 30 seconds passed. Then the gate creaked, slow and heavy. Jaden stepped through. The front door opened before he reached the porch. A man in a dark gray suit burst forward, followed by a woman in a robe, her hands shaking. They ran to him, and Lily, sensing them, lifted her head and whispered, "Daddy?" The man fell to his knees. "Oh my God," he choked, arms wrapping around her as if to pull her into himself. The woman sobbed, clutching Lily's face, kissing her cheeks. Jaden knelt and gently let Lily slide down. She stood, wobbly, then leaned into her father's arms. No one looked at Jaden, not at first. He backed away, hoodie soaked, fingers numb. The porch lights made everything look golden, like this was a dream for someone else. And it was. This wasn't his ending. He turned, walked back down the steps into the rain. 5 blocks away, he collapsed under a bus stop shelter, chest hollow. His body screamed for rest, but sleep didn't come. He couldn't stop hearing her voice. "Daddy!" He didn't hear the footsteps until they stopped right in front of him. Jaden looked up, startled. A man stood there, tall, coat dry despite the storm. Jaden tensed, ready to run. "I'm not a cop," the man said calmly. Jaden blinked. It was him, the man from the porch. "You walked 10 miles, Richard Ellison said, through this." He looked around. "With my daughter on your back." Jaden looked down at his hands. "Didn't do it for attention." "I know," Richard said. He sat beside him without ceremony and handed him a thermos. "Tea, still hot." Jaden hesitated, then took it. The warmth burned his hands, but it grounded him. For a moment, he didn't feel like a ghost. "My daughter told me something," Richard continued. "She said you didn't just help her. You listened to her. You told her a story. You stayed when you didn't have to." He paused. Most people walked past. Jaden didn't know what to say to that. "I want to help you," Richard said. Jaden flinched. "I don't need pity." "Not pity. Opportunity." Jaden looked away, jaw tight. "You think giving me a cot and a sandwich makes up for 16 years of being stepped over?" "No," Richard said simply. "But it might be a start." Jaden stared at the street. The storm was letting up now, but in his chest something else was building. Fear, maybe. Or hope. The kind of hope that hurt. "You're offering me something, but you don't even know my name." Richard smiled, tired. "Then tell me." Jaden's throat tightened. "Jaden." They sat in silence. "I don't belong there," Jaden muttered. "I think you do," Richard said. "Lily already thinks so. She's asking for her big brother." Jaden's breath caught, not because of what Richard said, but because of what he didn't. Because for the first time, someone saw him not as a liability, not as a stranger, but as something more. He didn't answer. Not yet. But in his chest, something shifted again. A door cracking open. A future blinking into view. Do you believe that a single act of compassion can rewrite someone's entire future? What would you do if the life you saved suddenly turned around and saved you back? But even as Jaden felt the warmth of something real for the first time, the city hadn't finished with him yet, and neither had the past. Jaden didn't say yes that day. He didn't move in, didn't pick out a bedroom or sit at Lily's kitchen table like he belonged. Instead, he returned to the city's undercurrent. Not because he wanted to, but because that was the only world he'd ever trusted. He needed time. Time to believe this wasn't a trick. That the warmth Richard Ellison offered wasn't a transaction. That Lily's smile wasn't something fragile that would shatter the second he reached for it. He slept in shelters for a few more nights, still avoiding the warm places too easily offered. He drifted back toward the neighborhoods where no one called him by name. But something inside had shifted. The silence didn't feel like home anymore. The cold wasn't just cold, it was punishment. And Lily's voice, small and steady, kept echoing in his memory. "You stayed when I was scared." When Jaden finally showed up at the Ellison house again, it wasn't through the front gate. He waited on the curb outside, soaked to the bone, watching the lights in the upstairs windows. He was about to turn away when the door opened and Lily ran barefoot onto the porch, arms outstretched. "You came back," she said, like she had never once doubted that he would. Richard followed behind her. No suit this time, just a sweater and worn jeans. The kind of clothes a father wears when he's not trying to impress anyone, only trying to be real. Jaden didn't say much as he stepped through the door. No one asked him to. They didn't ask for a backstory or a name beyond the one he'd already given. They simply made space, for his silence, for his exhaustion, for the slow way he let himself belong. The first few weeks weren't easy. Jaden flinched when the housekeeper reached toward him too quickly. He refused to sit at the dinner table the first 3 nights. He kept his backpack near, zipped tight under his arm like a lifeline. But Lily didn't mind. She would sit near him on the stairs and talk about things he never asked, like how braids felt when her mom used to do them, or the color of laughter in a room full of music. She said she heard colors, just like in his story. One night, as rain tapped gently against the windows, Lily asked if he still had the spork he used to eat with. He blinked. "How'd you know about that?" She shrugged. "You breathe different when you're touching it." Jaden pulled it from his old backpack and handed it to her. She ran her fingers over the tape. "Can I keep it?" she asked. "It's the first thing that fed me without fear." He didn't know what to say, so he nodded. Jaden enrolled in school under a special program the Ellisons had access to. He was given a laptop, a uniform, a new set of shoes. At first, the hallways felt foreign, every locker a wall, every teacher's voice like a siren waiting to accuse. But then someone said his name in homeroom, not as a warning or an insult, just as something expected, something normal. Still, not everything healed at once. One afternoon, he was walking Lily back from therapy when a black SUV slowed behind them. Jaden tensed immediately. 2 men in suits stepped out. One held a badge. "Jaden Walker?" the taller one asked. Jaden's grip on Lily's hand tightened. "Yes." The man explained calmly that they had traced footage from the convenience store and an earlier missing child case. Apparently, months before, a boy matching his description had been recorded in a group home in Indiana. He was listed as missing from the foster system, name flagged, but never followed up. A clerical error. One of many. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer began. Richard arrived within 15 minutes. Lawyers came after. The Ellisons had resources, and they used them, not to shield Jaden, but to tell the whole truth. Every step he had walked, every block, every bruise Lily had worn that night, photographed, dated, confirmed. The sandwich, the hoodie, the story he told her in the rain. It took weeks, but eventually the system relented, not because it was fair, but because someone powerful believed him. When the final hearing came, the judge asked Jaden if he had anything to say. He stood slowly. "I didn't carry her to be seen," he said. "I carried her because I know what it's like to go unseen. I wasn't trying to save anyone. I was just trying not to leave her behind." Afterward, the Ellisons offered to become his legal guardians. He said yes this time. Months passed. At Lily's 8th birthday, Jaden stood beside her as she held the cake and counted the candles with her fingers. The kitchen was loud with laughter, the smell of frosting and fresh flowers. Someone handed Jaden a gift, a simple notebook. Inside the cover, a note written in Lily's uneven print, "Write your own story next." Jaden blinked fast. He hadn't cried in years. But now, in this house that once seemed too bright, too far away, too filled with people who had never known hunger, he cried. Quietly, honestly. And just as he wiped his eyes, Lily leaned toward him and whispered, "Hey, you're not invisible anymore, okay?" He nodded, swallowing hard. "Okay." Later that night, after everyone left and the lights dimmed, Jaden stood on the porch alone. He looked out at the city's edge, its skyline glowing faint behind clouds. Somewhere out there, a boy was still sleeping under cardboard. A girl was still waiting in a dark alley. And the world was still spinning too fast to notice them. But now he knew something different. Sometimes, the smallest act, holding a hand in the rain, sharing a meal, staying when it would have been easier to walk away, could change everything. What part of this story stayed with you the most, and why? If you felt this journey deep in your heart, comment 100 below. Which country are you watching from? Tag a friend who needs to hear this story. Thank you for watching Life Stories.